today we're taking a look at another 4-card archetype, and unlike the previous one, this one is leagues better due to it being a tech archetype first of all, and well, the second of all is actually the card designers actually gave a shit when designing them, so yeah. This is the Topologic archetype used by Ryoken Kogami, or better yet, Revolver, and yeah, there are 4 link monsters, kind of like Jins have only Xyz monsters in their archetype, and Goyos only have Synchro monsters, so yeah, this is basically the Vrain's equivalent of Goyos, so yeah, and Jins, uh, whatever you wanna mention here. Whichever one is your favorite, I guess. So yeah. Anyway, there are 4 link monsters with pretty devastating effects. So yeah, let's take a look at our first monster, that being Topologic Trisbaena. This is a link 3. Sorry. Cyberse requires 2+ effect monsters and arrows pointing up, bottom left and bottom right, and has 2500 attack, and if a monster is special summoned to a zone discard points to, banish as many of those monsters as possible, also as many spell or traps on the field as possible, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each of their cards banished by this effect. As we'll see later on, all other topologic monsters have very boss monsterly effects such as this one, so yeah. This one is, well, each one specializes in a certain area, as we'll see, and this one specializes in the back row department, so yeah, if you're playing against a very back row heavy deck with lots of, like, I don't know, like Trap Trick or something, this is going to be a very, very welcome boss monster in that matchup, since, well, Trap Tricks are pretty much done for if they don't have access to some banish retrieval, so yeah. It's a good thing that the opponent can also trigger the effect by special summoning a monster in a zone discard points to. However, that is a bit too gimmicky to set up, since, well, unless they have like some other monsters on their field, and then the only monster zone is available is the one discard points to, so yeah, but you can also trigger it yourself, since this card also has 2 zones which point to your side of the field, so yeah, this is a nice card, and yeah, it's their only link 3, and all other monsters they have are link 4s, so yeah. First of which being Topologic Bomber Dragon, the first topologic monster ever to be introduced. Trisbaena is the second one, and I looked at Trisbaena first because it's a lower link level. Link rating, alright, gotta get used to these new terms. Has the exact same summoning condition. Its arrows are pointing up, bottom left, down and bottom right. Has 3000 attack, link 4 of course. And if another monster is special summoned to a zone a link monster points to, while this card is on the field, destroy all monsters in the main monster zones. Also, your other monsters cannot attack for the rest of this turn. After damage calculation, if this card attacked an opponent's monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. This one specializes in monster removal, and yeah, this was a bit of a funny comparison in the early Vrain's era. Well, at the very early start of the Vrain's era, well, it's still going, so yeah. How Topologic Bomber Dragon turns the field into a minefield. And yeah, this effect is actually the reason why 2 monsters, probably even more, actually went to the ban list. One of which is, how is it called? Phoenixian Cluster Amaryllis, the one that Aki used. Due to, well, each time Cluster Amaryllis, I don't know if it's revived or when it goes to the graveyard, it burns for 800 damage, and you just banish a plant in order to resummon it. Thanks to Topologic Bomber Dragon, you can infinitely activate and reactivate this effect, causing the opponent to drop dead at the end of the turn. Same applies for the other monster that got banned, which is Samsara Lotus, which is another anime card, that is the one that Yubel used. And it has the effect like where during the end phase, if you have no spell or trap cards in your spell and trap zone, you can special summon it. And yeah, the way how that trick worked is if you had like Nightmare Cerberus co-linked at the bottom arrow with the Topologic Bomber Dragon, and at Nightmare Cerberus's left arrow you had a co-linked Trickstar Black Catbat. It worked like this. Nightmare Cerberus protects all linked monsters from destruction, meaning Black Catbat and itself. And when a monster leaves the field, when it was linked to Black Catbat, meaning Samsara Lotus, Black Catbat burns the opponent for 300 damage. And of course, thanks to Samsara Lotus's effect and Topologic Bomber, you can infinitely activate and reactivate the effect until the opponent drops dead. So yeah, that should pretty much say how powerful these cards are. And yeah, this is this card is actually also better than Trisbaena, since the effect can trigger if the monster is special summoned to a zone any link monster points to. Well, Trisbaena's effect is usually triggered, well, only triggered if a monster is special summoned to a zone which exclusively is in Trisbaena's territory of pointing. So yeah, a bit better. So yeah, Topologic Bomber Dragon is a staple in many decks which can afford to make it, and that can afford blowing up their own monsters in order to gain some additional effects. For example, Mech Lords or Battle Lane Boxers, since they have a extensive amount of monsters that have floating effects. So yeah, and their next monster is a very notorious one, that being Topologic Gumblar Dragon. This one's also a link 4. It points up, down, left, and right. Same summoning conditions and same stats as Bomber Dragon. And if another monster is special summoned to a zone a link monster points to while this card is on the field, discard 1 or 2 random cards from your opponent. And then your opponent discards the same number. During your main phase, if this card is extra link and your opponent has at least 1 card in their hand, you can make your opponent discard 1 or 2 cards, whichever is higher. Then if they have no more cards in their hand, inflict 3000 damage to them. You can only use one effect of Topologic Gumblar Dragon effect per turn, and only once that turn. So yeah, all of you who are very familiar with the game and this monster, you should recognize that this monster is banned, and has been for quite a few months right now, due to causing an insane amount of FTK bullshit that is just unbearable. And yeah, as you can probably see, this one specializes in discarding and getting rid of the opponent's hands. So yeah, there were certain loops where you can just make 2 Gumblar Dragons and then make the opponent start, well, not 2, since all these effects are hard once per turn, but you can actually, the reason why it's banned is actually there were some very disgusting loops where you can actually, in conjunction with Gumblar Dragon, you can like make the opponent start like 2 cards during their next turn and then burn them for 3000 damage if they if you have somehow managed to empty out their hand, which is just very disgustingly FTK-ish. So yeah, I'm not even sure if it's going to come back or not, but the only possible reason how Gumblar Dragon can actually come back is if it made with the 3000 effect, the extra link effect, a hard once per duel effect. So yeah, that's the only possible logical conclusion I can think of for an errata for this card. So yeah, if it ever comes back at least to 1, run it immediately. You won't regret it, really. And their last monster is their newest Topologic monster in the from the very recent Reigns episodes, that being Topologic Zeroboros. Very weird set of link arrows, points top right, top left, and bottom right. So yeah, all the diagonal cardinal directions. Exact same summoning conditions and requirements as the Gumblar and Bomber Dragon. And you cannot summon or set monsters to any extra monster zone this card points to. Well, how can you set monsters to an extra monster zone? Gains 200 attack for each banished card. If another monster is special summoned to a zone a link monster points to while this card is on the field, banish all cards on the field. Once per turn during the standby phase of the next turn, after this card was banished by its effect, special summon the banished card. So yeah, this is a destroy all end all boss monster which just banishes everything, and everything. So it's supposed to be like the best, right? Well, I actually have quite a big problem with this card. This card banishes itself upon activating this effect, which is a huge problem for me, since all the previous topologics did not actually affect themselves when they use their own effects. And yeah, not to mention that this is so far the only link monster in the entire game with which is it possible to make a V-styled extra link. Yeah, I actually googled it. V-styled extra links are possible. However, you might be asking yourself how. It clearly states that you cannot summon monsters to a zone discard points. Oh, actually, this isn't the only card. The freaking what the hell is that monster called? I can't even remember it. It's from the Rocket archetype. It has 3 arrows all pointing upwards. Flash Charge Dragon or something like that. Let me just check. Yeah, Flash Charge Dragon. That's right. Flash Charge Dragon and Topologic Zeroboros are so far the only monsters in the entire game which can actually, with which is it possible to make an extra link, a V-styled extra link, if you have a card which can temporarily negate its effects, so you can actually make an extra link, and then, but however, if you actually manage to trigger its effect, then, well, your extra link's ruined. But thanks to its arrows, that might not be that much possible after you make that extra link. So yeah, if you choose to run this, it's probably fine at 1, and if you want to ever run it, you run it by preference, since it's not the best, but it's certainly not the worst. I would have actually loved it more if it didn't actually affect itself. Maybe make itself unable to attack this turn, or make all the damage your opponent takes 0 as soon as that effect activates. Maybe that would make it better. Maybe it would be a candidate for the limited list, maybe, but who knows? I'm not sure. But anyway, those were Topologics, and yeah, I managed to stretch this for 12 minutes due to talking how really cool and powerful these guys are. Again, I'm gonna give everything except versatility a 1 out of 3, because all those above factors all depend on the type of deck you're using. However, I'm gonna give versatility a fat 3 out of 3 due to the sheer power and generic summoning conditions that these guys offer, and they're just splashable in basically any deck that can afford to make them. So yeah, they're very welcome in Rockets, which is the other archetype used by Revolver, which focused on summoning them. So yeah, they actually have the same stat lines, and yeah, and all the factors that can make them functional in Rockets. So yeah, there's a good archetype now, a very nice tech archetype. So yeah, we pray that Gumblar Dragon is released from the clutches of Konami's ban list one day. Maybe if he gets a once per duel effect on the extra link effect. So yeah, and those were Topologics. So yeah, next time we'll be taking another Vrains archetype. Yeah, all of these archetype analysis videos are going to be Vrains archetypes. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos, boxes, and updates. Comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll have something even more exciting for you next time. See you all, have a good day, and peace.